I'm Alex Roman, Executive Editor for Metro Magazine, and welcome back to METROspectives. Today, my guest is Gary Coles, Chief Customer Success Officer at MV Transportation. Gary joins me to discuss MV's 50th anniversary and what it's been like to be part of that milestone, the need for innovation in the public transit industry, and much more. It's a great conversation. Hope you enjoy. Thanks for joining us. Well, here to talk about the 50th anniversary of MV Transportation is Gary Coles. Mr. Coles, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and happy to be here.
It's great to have you. And we wanted to talk a little bit. Let's start with MV turning 50. Can you talk a little bit about how the company got started and, sort of how it feels to hit this milestone?
Yeah, it's a tremendous accomplishment. In 1975, Faison Lottie, one of the initial founders, saw a need in her community in San Francisco that the elderly and disabled couldn't do things, quite frankly, we all take for granted. They couldn't get to the doctor, the grocery store, go to church, visit a friend. And her and Alex bought two vehicles and started giving trips. And her sister, in fact, were in some cases carrying disabled passengers, customers up and down steps in San Francisco. And we all know how difficult that can be.
Yeah. Wow.
And from there, understanding it was 15 years before any of the federal ADA laws went into place of 1990. They went to the city of San Francisco and explained the following year what they've been doing. Brokered a deal, bought 8 more vehicles, and off goes MV Transportation, turning into the largest American-owned provider of transit management services that they are today.
Yeah.
The goal initially, she wanted to help people, her and Alex, and they wanted to help people. MV offered that human kind of interaction to passengers. And for many years, our slogan, you'll probably hear me say this a few times today, our slogan was, "We provide freedom." Because what they understood early was that for many of these passengers, if it was not for the service they were providing, they would be trapped in their homes. So it's been an incredible ride, a ride with purpose, certainly pioneers and innovators in this space.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about, sort of when MV took off? Obviously it started in the Bay Area, which is, a couple hours from me. When did it start to take off and start to kind of form into something that became national?
Yeah, so 1990, the federal ADA laws went into place, and that formed structure, but also, federal requirements around services that agencies and municipalities had to provide for all citizens,
Right.
Particularly the disabled individuals. Particularly on the West Coast during this time, MV had started to build a very significant brand for themselves, and growth was happening quickly.
How long you been with MV yourself?
I started with MV in 2007, towards the end of the year. So for me, it's not quite 20 years, but I'm getting close.
Yeah. Coming up on about 18 years, huh? Can you talk a little bit about your experience there? I mean, what has it been like during your time to see MV continually grow and come into the company it is today?
When I came to MV Transportation, I came with a lot of industry contacts and relationships. And I think that was really important at the time because expansion was happening, and it was happening at a very rapid pace. The foundation of MV, when I got here, and what I noticed was hard work, resilience. Employees were very dedicated.
Yeah.
And it was important that we all communicated very well together. and we had to be aligned under the one mission, that we were going to take care of the citizens and the communities we serve. We were going to provide that freedom that many wouldn't have otherwise. And we were going to bring a very personal touch to the services that we provided, whether it was in the para space or in the big bus fixed route space.
Yeah.
A lot of it was to make sure that we understood both the short and the long-term goals for these agencies.
Right.
What was their vision for the future for the agencies, and where were they going to take them? Some back then, they were looking to add things like rail service, bus rapid transit service, and how could the services that we provide accentuate what they wanted to do? And in many cases, innovation was the key component.
I'm curious though, you were talking about kind of understanding what the agency's goals were.
Yeah.
In that partnership with the agencies, obviously you're bringing something as a contractor, you're bringing it to the table as well. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how those two things come together? Your goals and your kind of efficiencies that you brought matching with the agency's goals, and some of the things maybe that they weren't aware that could be done, or how you help them do it better.
Driving for continuous innovation and efficiency, quite frankly, is how you win a contract, but also both grow a contract and keep a contract. It's important. It's still very important in our day-to-day that we are constantly looking for innovations that can improve efficiencies, because our goal is certainly to be a good steward of the funds spent by our agency partners. If we were providing service that didn't meet the key performance indicators, on-time performance, number of passengers per hour, passenger drop-off by appointment time, then that was going to leave a mark on the system,
Right.
and no one's going to ride a system that I can't trust nor depend on.
Right.
And so those things are the driving forces for us as a private contractor, and understanding and anticipating where agencies are looking to move, new things they want to try, and be working internally on how we're going to provide them some recommendations for those things that we can see that they want to bring into their organization. It's really important.
Yeah. And as you started to get out of just paratransit, MB is offering, kind of a suite of services now. As you kind of came out of those, away from just paratransit into other services, how do you think the company kind of maintained its founding principles? And, how were you able to help agencies kind of adapt to these new kind of service models?
When I first came to MV, headquarters was still in Northern California. But not long after, the company had continued to grow, and we had operations, large operations in pretty much every major city. Chicago, the Midwest. We expanded greatly into Texas, all major cities there, New York City, from New York down to Florida, and in between, large systems in between.
Right.
But also Canada, and during those days, we also had contracts in the Middle East as well. So, expanding into the other services like fixed route, now micro transit, first mile, last mile, but also being able to provide additional services like shuttle services, airport, corporate, school bus,
University stuff.
university. but offering, zero emissions and planning expertise. We have a team of individuals at MV, engineers and experts that are well skilled in this zero emissions electric vehicle space to help agencies plan um, for adding those vehicles to their fleet. We operate the only 100% electric fleet in the United States in Antelope Valley, California, and we've learned things, right? That infrastructure has to be in place before those buses hit the property.
Right.
And if you do it out of order, you're just going to cost yourself some pain later. So we advise our agency partners on how they should step and the order and what we've learned over time. One of the most difficult areas to hire now is maintenance. And so to
Right.
address that, we realize we've got to grow our own. And we have a DOT approved maintenance apprenticeship program. And it's a great opportunity for young individuals or all individuals to come into the maintenance space for maintaining vehicles and have a career.
Yeah.
So we've done that. And then on top of that, technology still drives everything. Uber, Lyft coming into transportation, not necessarily into the transit world, but coming into as a very avid form of transportation,
Yeah.
created a different expectation for riders, right?
Definitely.
And we've embraced that. We partner with those companies in our business, again, because we realize the same slogan still applies as we provide freedom.
I have a few more things. I think first, you were talking about technology, and
Mm-hmm.
I think MB brings a certain kind of help to the agencies because they have experience with that technology before they bring it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can you talk a little bit about how you're able to kind of help agencies figure out what technologies might be best for them, especially in a world where maybe they're willing to try the technology, maybe they're inexperienced and they're used to kind of the learning curve anyways. Can you talk a little bit about how you help them get ahead of that curve and help them kind of select what might be the best fit for their specific agency?
Absolutely. And you've pretty much framed that. I mean, at its foundation, you have to understand what are the concerns and the needs of the agency.
Mhm.
In many cases, the paratransit ridership has grown to a level. Remember, I said it's an unfunded mandate that it's become cost prohibitive.
Mhm.
The growth has for many agencies. So um, the use of software and the creation of efficiencies and to be able to provide the trips cheaper is really, really important. In addition, we um, have relationships with all of these new providers coming into the space. Once you know what they're looking for or how they're planning to grow or move or innovate, our knowledge of the softwares that are available, then we start to make recommendations. We can bring in those software partners. They can do pilot programs to show those agencies how we can improve their systems. Everyone knows a well-run, well-planned transit system is the economic engine for any system, any city, because it's so important in many cases to the essential workers. And that's what we saw during the pandemic. That's what we've known forever. But it became more apparent during the pandemic, getting the nurses and even the gas station attendants and those essential workers to their jobs so they could provide those services to the community.
And that becomes more important. I mean, for a lot of agencies, I think we've seen several stories come up in the last couple weeks where some of the federal funds are now dry that we're getting during COVID. So kind of back to doing more with less sort of thing. How can MB continue to work with its properties and to helping them kind of be able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, Alex, look, if you're in your wherever you know, your major city, and you see these bigger buses moving throughout the day with very few people on them in some cities,
Hmm.
doesn't apply to all, but in some. What we also know is that yes, the paratransit ridership came back at a much faster pace than both the fixed route and rail. Rail being probably the most expensive component of transit provided, um, and that ridership probably has only returned something less than 70% pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
So how do you move people in a um, um, a less expensive way, but just as efficiently or even more efficiently? You integrate smaller vehicles into the service that can allow you to park some of the bigger vehicles throughout the day, but also feed those main lines so that those services can stay very productive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think maybe my last question, kind of reflecting on 50 years and looking forward, hopefully, to 50 more for MV. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the short-term goals for the company and sort of looking ahead, what sorts of things you hope to kind of help your properties with and hope help the agencies, I mean, just in general, the industry kind of move forward into kind of the next generation of public transit.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would be remiss not talking about what we refer to as the new MV.
Mhm.
Um, Coming out of the pandemic, some agencies shut their doors or reduced service significantly. MV made a change in our leadership about 2.5 years ago and brought in Harry Wilson, who is our executive chairman and CEO, Kevin Klicka, who had been a long time employee with MV as West President and Chief Operating Officer for many, many years, returned with Harry when Harry came on board. And quite frankly, um, there's been a renewed focus on investing in our employees and providing excellent customer service to our customers
Mhm.
um, uh, in the communities that we serve. The new MV is a transformational sort of strategic plan to set the future up as the industry continues to change to zero emissions, to microtransit, to first mile, last mile, but with a focus on the people, our employees first, our customers that we serve, you know, meaning the riders as well as our agency partners.
Yeah, great. Thanks for joining me, Mr. Coles. I appreciate it.
Anytime, Alex, reach out whenever you need an answer, and I'll be here to help.
Great. Thank you.